Okay, can you hear me this time? For some reason, it keeps changing the mic input after I hit record. Okay, sweet. So we have audio now. I don't know why it kept changing my mic every time I would hit start. It was changing it to a mic that didn't exist. So hopefully it stays and we can keep going. Like I was saying when I started, I put a link up in the very top of chat that you can click if you want to join live. It'll let you join like a Zoom link with audio and video if you want to join that way. Otherwise, in the chat box is also good. And after last week's podcast where somebody asked about like one-on-one question answering and mentoring, I went ahead and set up a website where you can like book half hour and hour time slots to get like technical questions, build questions, just general Land Cruiser questions asked, because we get so many phone calls at the shop looking for tech help, and it's really hard to step away from what I'm working on to answer phone calls. I did a website where you can book time, and then I know ahead of time what I'm doing, and I can try to help more people that way. And I'll put a link to that in the description. I think that's the only thing really new this week. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, fire away. I don't really have anything off the top of my head to talk about. And hello, Jose, tuning in all the way from Panama. I've only been to the airport in Panama, never actually in the country, or like outside the airport. FBS Rider 59 wants to know thoughts on 100 series first transmission service drain and fill at 125K. Ever seen any issues from a service at that mileage? I haven't. We do what appears to be on a lot of them the first drain and fill, even 200,000 miles. I think if you were doing like a power flush, maybe you could run into problems. But I think with just a drain and fill where you're not stirring things up or disturbing anything or forcing anything through, I think getting fresh fluid in there with, fresh additives and friction modifiers would outweigh the potential for anything that could go wrong. So I haven't, we don't do a ton of transmission services, but we're starting to do more and more. Judging by the fluid that's coming out of these trucks, I mean, being dark brown to black, they definitely were due for being changed. I know Toyota lists US as a lifetime fluid. Everything I've read, like aftermarket wise, recommends changing it around 60K, like every 60,000. And I know, like in my little CT 200A and my wife's Prius, at about 60K, it's starting to look brown and ready to change. So that seems like a pretty accurate interval to go with. And somebody asked if they should change the filter. Every Toyota transmission I've ever opened up, like dropped the pan on, the filter's been more of just a screen. It's not like a paper filter, like an oil filter, an air filter, whatever. It just kind of filters out the big chunks. So we don't drop the pan unless the pan's leaking to change the filters, because it doesn't really seem necessary.
I have a
Yeah.
89 FJ62, and it's actually been to your shop before, but it's been a number of years. It has a H55F swap, and recently I did some different work on it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's related to the problem at hand, but basically the issue is it has like a slight misfire, or it's like a patch of rough running, different RPM intervals with different throttle applications or different throttle amount applied. Just I guess a heads up on what has been done so far, just like a basic tune-up in terms of cap, rotor, plugs, wires. TPS and AFM are all relatively new. The battery cables have been replaced. So just wanted to know if you had any idea of what to check next. It's quite vague, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's always hard to tell without seeing it, hearing it, feeling it. Usually on a 62 that's running rough, like tune up like spark plugs, wires, cap and rotor, that would have been my first go-to.
No.
Are you
I've
getting
checked the
any
codes. There's no
codes like check
codes.
engine light for rich or lean? Okay. Those don't always set them. But yeah, like mass airflow sensor, because that's still the flapper style mass airflow. Like if the door's hanging up, it could be reading funky. Or I guess even one of the things I would check would be the rubber boot that goes from
Yeah.
the mass airflow sensor, to the throttle body. I would check that really close for cracking, because I've seen them where they look good, but then, when you apply throttle and the engine rocks a little bit and it stretches, like there's cracks in it that open up and let unmetered air through. and you'll get
Okay.
weird running only when that crack is open. But yeah, that
That
oxygen
throttle body
sensors,
hose has been replaced somewhat recently, as
fuel
well as
injector.
also the oxygen sensors, both with
Okay.
Denso and I think Bosch. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they don't seem
Okay.
to like Bosch, but if they've had Denso, that's good.
I have.
Have you
Yeah, I think
checked the
it's set
timing?
to
Although that wouldn't be a
9
weird.
degrees, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
or 11. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
like it seems like you've checked all the basics. Unless you've got a fuel injector that's working some of the times, but
Those were
not spraying all the
maybe
time.
4 years ago. I had this sent off and I guess rebuilt or whatever you call it from one of the standard companies that does that.
Okay, yeah, like cleaned out.
To
Did
be
it
honest,
sit for any length of time
it's
before it started acting up?
maybe like 15 years ago. So shop worked on it, and ever since then, it's had this like kind of stumble. Uh, and it used to only happen in third gear at like I don't know, like 1800 RPMs, but it would happen every time, and that was going on for I mean years and years. And I just kind of ignored it. I replaced the headlight harness with like a harness that connects directly to the battery like 6 months ago, and when I did that, it stopped doing the stumble. Um, and then when I maybe 2 months ago, I did some other work on it, including battery cables, and I changed to LED lights and just I replaced the exhaust as well. So when I did that, that's kind of when this rough running came back or began again. Maybe it's not related to what happened before. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's just a rather peculiar case. So I just wanted to run it by you.
Yeah, with it seeming to change with doing other electrical work, I'd almost
Yeah,
be tempted to check the running voltage like at the coil to see if maybe you've got voltage drop, like you've got like a corroded wire, or a bad connection somewhere that's not
it
letting the coil
seems
get
like
full voltage,
maybe
so you're not
that
getting
could you could be
full
onto something.
output either.
Before I replaced all of the plug wires, and that improved things, but it didn't eliminate it for whatever it's worth.
Okay. And it might be worth like well, I would check voltage to the igniter and I would check voltage, to the coil.
Okay,
And it might be worth
I did
just
that as well,
trying a new
actually,
coil.
but I didn't
I had an
replace the
old
igniter.
Forerunner.
Just I don't think that was available. I just
Okay.
purchased. Yeah, I just purchased a new coil. The
Yeah, they're
way back when this work was done, when this kind of started originally, the frame was welded on. That couldn't have caused any electrical issues like with the distributor itself, could it? I mean, I have no idea. Just
it it could
yeah.
uh like you're always supposed to
I
undo the
don't know if that
battery and
happened or not.
like
I had to
all that
after
jazz.
that work was done. I replaced the ECU as well. There was a lot of codes after I got the truck back. So I'm just wondering if something maybe could have occurred with the welding.
Yeah, I mean it
Yeah,
may have made one of the
yeah.
pickups in the distributor, not happy. Yeah, we had, I think it was an FJ62 that was running weird, but only sometimes. And we kept having to test drive it and test drive it and test drive it. And then we were out on a test drive and it started making this horrible
I
squealing
see.
noise. And one of the pickups in the distributor just let go and like kind of shredded and all the windings wrapped up on the distributor
Yeah,
shaft. And it's like, oh, okay, there's the problem. We know what it is now. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And it may be one where it would speed the process up. Like
yeah,
if you could hook an oscilloscope, which I guess, not everybody has, but if you could wire that up like to the coil, igniter, and maybe the pickups in the distributor and just drive and see if any of them, go funky.
yeah. I imagine so.
But that one's probably going to be fun to track
Yeah,
down, unfortunately.
yeah. I mean, my
Yeah, that's
troubleshooting
a weird one.
capabilities are not the best. I was more of just changing out parts, hoping for to fix it. But I think I'm kind of reached the end of that process. Maybe at some point we could arrange a time for you to have a look at the shop or something. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
just let
Cool.
us know.
Thanks for answering my
We can
questions. I
take a look at it.
appreciate it. Well, I think it's hard to have
Yeah.
that in this
Sorry I
situation.
didn't have a silver bullet for you.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, but just let us know if you need to bring it out. No problem. And on a 2007 LX470, the driver's side mirror doesn't tilt down. What are your thoughts? And how do I remove the mirror to replace the motor? That is a really good question. Yeah, I would assume that if it's not tilting down, that the motor is bad, or you've got a bad wire between the switch and the motor itself, which, going through the door, they can break. I've never taken an LX470 side mirror apart. We usually let the body shop deal with those since they need to be painted anyway, like when they're replacing a whole assembly. So I've never taken one apart. I want to say on the 80 series, there's a screw hole in the bottom of the mirror housing, and you undo a screw, and then you can pop the glass out. But yeah, I've never taken one apart, unfortunately, to give you a better answer. And I wanted to say, Brian, thanks for being the first person to join in live to see how that works. That was awesome. This is the third iteration of this podcast where I'm using the software, and up until now, nobody had joined in live except for typing in chats. So that was really cool. I Am the Moth wants to know, do you have experience with lunchbox lockers? He has a 93 FZJ80 and is thinking of installing one in the rear. Yes, I ran a Lockright and the Detroit version of the Lockright in my old Forerunner for years. They're not awesome to drive on. Like, if it's your daily driver, it's gonna suck. You get used to it, but they're quirky and they do weird things. Like, they'll lock and unlock at weird times, like freeway on ramps, sweeper curves. If you've got snow and ice where you live, it can be real disconcerting when they lock and unlock because it'll make the back end walk. Yeah, I ran Lockrights and then the Detroit, and then I jumped up to, I think it was a Detroit soft locker, like one of the full carrier replacement ones in that Forerunner, and that had better road manners than the lunch boxes, but not by much. And then I went to air lockers in that truck, and that was way better. And my current 80 has an e locker converted to air in the back, and an air locker in the front, and that's just it's way better. But like, if you're looking for a locker and that's all that you can swing money wise, then yeah, they work. There's just a lot of downsides to driving with them. I had them probably in my early 20s, so it was one of those like, this is all I can afford. It works. But now that I've gotten older, I wouldn't do it again, after having driven on them. But I know lots of people, like my dad had, a Lockright in his 40 for years. And like the longer wheelbase and the heavier 80 makes it not as squirrely, but it's still not super fun. Oh, and Gray answered how to get the wind or the mirror glass off. So awesome. Thank you for posting that. I didn't think about gunk in the mirror making it not go down, but I guess if like a mud dauber or something had gotten up in there and made a nest, you could jam it. And it looks like Gray's on my boat that Lincoln lockers and lunchbox lockers are only for off-road. And Money wrote KDSS, but I'm not sure what they'd like to know. I Am the Moth wants to know, do you delete your EGR? And my answer is no. I'm going to put that there for a reason. The computer programming accounts for that being there. It's my understanding that it helps to eliminate ping going down the highway. So I leave it. It doesn't cause a problem. I mean, it's not 1973 where EGR was like killing power. I don't see a point in deleting it. That said, with like on an 80 where the stupid light's on for it not flowing, or the check engine light, we do get the test plugs that trick the computer into thinking that it's at the right temperature and flowing, but I don't do all the block offs and deletes. That way, if the system is still functional, or at least semi-functional, it can still do its thing to its best of its ability. I just use the block or the test plugs to make the computer think it's working at full tilt, so I don't get the annoying light. But no, I don't delete it. I don't see a point in deleting it, and especially being a shop that would fall under emissions tampering, which is not good if you get caught doing it. So yeah, we leave them because I don't see them causing a problem. And Burke wants to know, 1997 80 series fuel filler neck has rusted out and leaking when filling. Is a fuel rated hose a safe fix? Toyota doesn't seem to make them anymore. And that is correct. Toyota discontinued them for a couple years. We were making a stainless steel patch section that replaced the horizontal portion where it most commonly rusts out. But I stopped making those a couple of years ago when we shut down the manufacturing and fabrication side of the business. That said, we were splicing them in using filler neck hose. Uh, because that's the way they join the filler neck to the tank. And like when you do dual tanks with the dual filler neck, it's got a short section of hose. So I don't see a problem using uh, filler neck hose to jump around rusted portion, because even when we've had people find a good used filler neck, you still it doesn't come in and out without lifting the body up off the frame to get enough clearance to fish it out. So we still cut them kind of parallel to the frame and splice them into two pieces so you can get them in easier. And I think I was buying my filler neck hose. I think it's just fillernecks.com or fillerneck.hose.com, something like that. And they had the metric sized filler neck that's a good fit. 33 millimeters is stuck in my head for some reason, but that may not actually be it. I'd have to go look at the hose at the shop to see what size it is. But yeah, I don't see a problem in using fuel rated hose. You'll just you'll want to check it often to make sure it's not leaking, the clamps don't move and it seals. But between rubber filler hose or not driving the truck anymore because I can't get a filler neck, I'd lean towards replacing it with rubber hose, and hopefully somebody will come back out with an aftermarket one. Good job replacing the dimmer switch, Jack. I hate doing those. Glad you've got headlights again, or high beams. And Gray said my Y pipe split, can't hear any background. Oh, that's awesome. Y pipe split runs fine, deleted EGR. How long does an average catalytic converter last? I'm afraid the cat's bad, Y pipe split bad. I've never seen an 80 series converter fail. We do see the Y pipe fail all the time. Like they get old, they get brittle, they split, and they crack at the weld right in the middle of the V. And we just get the MagnaFlow downpipes to replace them. They seem to hold up well, and they're a lot less expensive than the factory Toyota. And Jack says that they overcomplicate the dimmer switch. It's a shame you have to pull the steering wheel. He says he's going to bring his car by. One day he'll be in the Stafford area in a few months. Yeah, we're probably only half an hour from Stafford. We're a straight shot up 17 from there. So not far at all. And I guess I never mention it, but if anybody's looking for Land Cruiser work, we're about an hour outside of Washington, D.C., a little bit south and west in Virginia, not too far off of I-5 if you're coming from other states. And Jack wants to know how business is. We've been really slow, especially the last couple of weeks. Like July, like June and July, we were swamped. We were like super busy. And then, August, we had enough to, not keep us busy, but, fill the day. And then last week of August, the first week and a half, 2 weeks of September, we are slow. I actually came home early today just to do office work and stuff to get all that done before chat tonight. Yeah, hopefully it picks back up. We've got a couple of jobs coming in for next week. But yeah, we've been slow, which slow means I don't have much to do. And slow means also not a whole lot of chances to film videos on repairs. And Gray said, not an OEM converter on his truck. Yeah, the metal's thin, due to fail. And want to know if the MagnaFlow is a good part. Cut and weld install. No, the MagnaFlow is a bolt-in. It like bolts in just like the Toyota downpipe with the front cat. I know they make weld-in ones, but we use the full downpipe, and they've gotten more expensive recently. They used to only be like $350. I want to say they're closer to 600 or 700 now. Last time I looked, but still cheaper than Toyota. And hello to Trapper. I'm the Moth. Said he's in California and do have the code 71 for EGR since his 93 is OBD1. Thinking you're getting the EGR test plug kit from HUD Expo. Will that kit block code 71 or check engine light altogether? So I've never actually used it on an OBD1 truck. I've only done it on the 95 to 97s. But as far as I understand, all the HUD Expo is doing is putting a resistor in line so that the EGR, instead of the EGR temp sensor being there, that's supposed to get up to like 276 degrees for proper flow, it's just telling the computer all the time that the temp sensor is at 276 degrees. So it just, whenever the computer is checking and looking for that sensor's temp, it always sees a correct temp. So that's the nice thing about it, is all your other codes will still show up. So if you've got lean running or misfires or, whatever else, those will still show. It's just keeping the computer from seeing a problem with EGR flow. Yeah, and Jack says he's got the EGR kit from HUD Expo, and it's worked well. Yeah, I've got it on my 80. but I only did the test plug. I didn't do any of the block offs or the ball bearings, or any of that comes with it. I just, unplugged the temp sensor and plugged the test plug in. And I know we've got a bunch of customers that have done that and haven't had the EGR flow code come back since. So it really is an elegant solution. I have not driven a 700H yet. I don't even know, but I've seen one in person. Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, none for me yet. And Principal wants to know if I'm still running and doing running races. Yeah, I stopped for probably like 2 years and I gained way too much weight. And then I started running again back in the spring. And I've got a 10-mile race that my wife and I are doing, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. So that'll be fun. And George says 2003 LX470, pulled the transfer case, do a part-time and lower gears. I installed it back and now I'm seeing tranny fluid leaking out. I did change the output tranny seal. Can the seal fail? Yeah, I mean, there's always the chance of a bad seal. And there's always the chance, like when you're manhandling and trying to jam the trans back in there, if you cock it, you can booger the seal going in and then have to replace it. It's not super common, but I've definitely messed them up putting a transfer case back in and had to pull everything back apart and replace it. Not fun, but it happens. And Jack says, what's your thoughts on the theory that the head gasket failures are related to the US having EGR? I've heard that. I don't know that I personally put a lot of weight in it because that would only affect number 6 cylinder. And we see them blow on all the cylinders. Yeah, it's more common on 5 and 6. I think it's more just it's a long block that's an aluminum head on a cast iron block and they expand at different rates. I also don't think that the 1FC head gasket issue is nearly as prevalent as the internet makes it out to be. We've done probably a few hundred 80 series through the shop over the years, and we've seen 6 actually blown head gaskets. I've done a ton of head gaskets as preventative maintenance, but in the 20 years I've been doing this, I've only seen 6 that were actually blown. So yeah, and Gray says he's gonna have to find a weld-in Y piece, because he's seen the OEM cat going for 700 to 1400. He doesn't need the cat. We just did full from the manifolds all the way to the rear exhaust on an FJ Cruiser, and I want to say it was like $7,000 or $8,000 in just parts. It was insane doing it all Toyota. Ooh, I would be down for a half marathon in Durango. I have not done 13 miles lately, but I've got a 10-miler coming up in a week. So 13's not much longer. The longest I've done is 50 miles, and I've done a bunch of 50Ks at 31 miles. So yeah, 13 would be fun. Durango's beautiful. I'd love to come back out to Colorado. My local running group has been talking about doing one in it's just north of Denver, and I can't think of the name of the city it's in. And I'm the Moth says he wishes he had OBD2 and he wishes I was on the West Coast. There are lots of good Land Cruiser shops on the West Coast. Yeah, the West Coast, Utah, Arizona, Colorado. You guys got a plethora of Land Cruiser shops. Over on the East Coast, not so many. Yeah, I'm due for a Colorado trip. We went out. It was like the tail end of COVID. We did a week where we just drove all around Colorado and doing a bunch of different day hikes. I really liked it out there. We're going up. I think mid-October. We're going up to the Catskills for a long weekend of hiking. Hopefully the leaves will be changing. But yeah, New York up in that area is super beautiful too. Completely different kind of beautiful than Colorado, but beautiful nonetheless. Yeah, I've never been to Moab. My wife's hiked in Arches and a couple of the other parks in Utah, but I don't think I've ever been further west than Arizona in the US. Yeah, upstate New York's pretty awesome. I think this will be our 3rd trip up to go hiking up there. And it's easily accessible and yeah, just easy to get to and beautiful. What hike are you doing near Waynesboro, Jack? That's not too terribly far from us. Jeremy wants to know, do you think that Toyota knows that 10K oil changes on their new turbo engines is killing their reliability? I don't see how they wouldn't. From what I've read, manufacturers are going to the longer oil change intervals to reduce the cost of ownership side of things, like I guess it's JD Power and Associates or whatever, when they rank them as, new ownership, the cost of repairs and maintenance. Like if you spread the oil changes out that far and have to do way less of them, then that number comes down. And I think they really don't care after the warranty's up what happens to the engine. As cynical as that is. And Humpback Rock is awesome. I've done that one a couple of times. Hopefully it's not a super windy day. But yeah, we see a lot of vehicles, that have the 10K service intervals. And I think we write our stickers for 5K for everything and using full synthetic because an oil change, multiple oil changes are way cheaper than a new engine. So yeah, we recommend, a 5K interval just to try to keep things clean and keep things lubricated, especially with the way modern vehicles are burning oil between changes. We had, granted, this was a Hyundai, no, it was the Kia Soul, and she'd been in 5,000 miles ago for an oil change and hadn't checked it since. And I didn't, I pulled in, I checked the dipstick. There was nothing on the dipstick. So I measured what came out, and half a quart came out. Half a quart out of a system that should have had four. I don't know how her car was still running. I don't know how it hadn't set codes, but half a quart came out, which was crazy. And yeah, I'm the Moth says he recently saw 0W8. Yeah, the new super thin oils are crazy. It's like pouring in water when you're doing the oil change. I haven't done a 0.8 yet, but I've done 0.16 and maybe 0.12. And yeah, it's crazy. Trapper wants to know if a 3,000 mile interval is overkill or advisable on a 2UZ. 3,000 is probably overkill, especially if you're running synthetic. We recommend a 5,000. Also, we recommend a 5,000, knowing that most people go well over that, and we're not actually going to see it till 6 to 8,000. But yeah, we usually do about 5,000. And Jason's right with tire rotation. Because if you rotate your tires every 5,000, they last way longer. Ooh, and Gray says his nephew had to warranty replace a turbo on his 24 Tundra. Yeah, we had a customer with a 23 Tundra, and I was just not impressed with the engine on that thing. It looked like a 90s Mitsubishi. Like it was terrible. And I'm the Moth says he goes with the Rotella T6 1540. Yeah, that's what I run in my 80. If I run the 530 that's supposed to be in there, I have 3 psi of oil pressure. I get 11 on 1540. And yeah, if you're running Mobile 1, I think 5K is plenty fine. And there's a guy, and I cannot think of the YouTube channel, but the guy's name is Lake Speed Jr. And it might be Motor Oil Geek, but he has super interesting videos on like the different aspects of motor oil and how it's formulated and the weights and the additives and the different base stocks from like a really scientific perspective. Some of his stuff's really cool to watch because he's actually like in laboratories testing oil. I think it's the Motor Oil Geek, but it's Lake Speed Jr. is the guy's name. But super interesting videos if you want to go down the rabbit hole of motor oil. And Burke wants to know if I'm doing Overland Expo East in Arrington, Virginia, October 3rd to 5th. I'm not. I've never been down to Expo East. We passed a convoy, like we went hiking in North Carolina one weekend. I guess it was the same weekend, and we passed everybody going down. But I've never been. That's just really not my jam. I like being out in the woods. I like camping. I don't like being around a whole lot of people. Yeah, like the older I get, like I would rather just be on foot in the woods. Yeah, four-wheeling's fun, but I'd rather just hike or trail run. We're going to Kappa Land Cruiser Club's wheeling event in Winchester, Virginia at the end of October. And Crash, my tech, he's not going to bring his truck. So I think he's just going to drive the Shady 80 and I'm just going to hike along and film everybody because I just really don't care about driving. And I'll just let him drive and have fun and I'll film everything. Kind of feel like you see more when you're on foot and you appreciate it more when you've got to go up the hills. Turbo FCJ80 wants to know if I can go over the LSPV and how to bleed and in what order to bleed when bleeding the brakes. I just did that this morning. Actually just replaced LSPV and all the brake lines and a master cylinder on an 80. So when I do them, we power bleed them. I've got I think it's a Brannick, pressure pot bleeder, with the adapters that go on the master. So we pressure bleed them. It seems to make it go much better. And I start with the LSPV. I bleed that until I don't have any more air coming out. I do passenger rear, passenger front, driver front. And then we've got a gravel parking lot. I go out and do a couple of high-speed runs into the parking lot and slide to activate the ABS and get any air that might be in the ABS block knocked loose. And then I pull it back into the shop and bleed it a second time, LSPV, passenger rear, driver rear, passenger front, driver front. And that seems to get it all taken care of. And Jason says he did an experiment and bought 6 tires rather than 5, and when rotating, rear go to the front, the 2 spares go on the rear, and 2 front become spares. And he's noticed better tire wear and longer life. Yeah, I mean, rotating tires really extends the life. And Sean says he just pulled the block out of his 97 80 series, had already back to the machine shop. Videos have been instrumental in helping my process along. Thank you. Awesome. Glad they can help, or glad they've been of help. I have a lot of fun making them. So glad they're actually doing good and helping people. People keep asking for a video on pulling the engine out on an 80 series, and it's like trying to film that and get all the camera angles and edit out all the swear words. That would just be way too difficult. And oh, that's a good point. Turbo FZJ says he has the AVM hubs on the front. Should he engage them so that the ABS works and follow the parking lot slide? Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt. You don't we don't always do the parking lot slide, but it does seem to really get that last bit of air that's stuck in the system out. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd go through the trouble of, locking the hubs and clearing the ABS codes just to do the brake bleed. But if you think you've got some residual air, it wouldn't hurt to try it. And Jack says his ABS is disabled because the module's bad. I was wondering your thoughts on deleting the ABS module and LSPV so I could get stiffer brake pedal. I have a theory about the ABS blocks. We have 80 series that come in with awesome brakes, and then we have 80 series that come in that have the squishiest, spongiest brakes you've ever seen, my truck included. And you can go through and you can replace everything that's replaceable, and they still have squishy, spongy brakes. And it's my theory that the inside of the brake block, like the modulator, is leaking internally, and that's what's giving them the squishy brakes. So if it's already failed, I don't see a problem with deleting it. My brother deleted his on his 97. It was funny. He deleted his, and that was the only thing he hadn't changed except for the booster. And he still had squishy brakes. And he replaced his booster, and it firmed the brakes up, which I don't understand how that worked because, every time I've ever seen a booster fail, it's made the brakes go rock hard, not squishy. But the last step for him was replacing his booster to get rid of the squishy brakes. I kind of like the idea of the LSPV being in the system just because it modulates the rear brakes. If you remove it, you've got to put, some kind of proportioning valve in there to keep the rear brakes from locking up. I did disc brakes on a first gen 4Runner eons ago and, put a manual proportioning valve in and didn't adjust it properly. And me and a buddy were coming down the highway, doing 60 miles an hour, and somebody cut us off, and I had to slam on the brakes, and the rears locked up first, and we just started spinning donuts down the highway. So if you do replace or delete the LSPV and put a manual proportioning valve in, you just want to be real particular about setting it. And I think the beauty of the LSPV is it adapts to different, if you've got weight in the back, you don't have weight in the back. So I would leave that, if possible. And Jason says his LX had same soft brake issue until he's changed the booster. Very interesting. Yeah, I don't understand how a booster would cause soft brakes. Apparently that's a thing. But my truck has a new booster on it. The only thing that has not been replaced on my truck is the ABS block, and I've still got super squishy brakes. Like when I go from my little hybrid CT200 to my 80 series, it's really sketchy. Like the first couple miles, getting used to how soft the brakes are, and it stops great, but the brakes are super soft. We're closing in on 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna jump off of here for the evening. Jack says boosters ain't cheap. The boosters aren't horrible. I get mine from Cruiser Yard down in Texas. I get the Saken ones from him, and they're not horrible. But yeah, I'm gonna jump off for the evening. Thank you for everybody that tuned in tonight and asked questions, and thank you for the folks on at the very beginning that stuck through the microphone issues when it kept turning my mic off. And I will catch you guys next week, Thursday at 8 p.m., and I'll edit all this up and post it here in a bit. And one last before we go, or two more. Principal says his LSPV is leaking, non-ABS 94, and was wondering if he should try to replace it or put a manual valve. I would replace it with an OEM and leave the LSPV. It's pretty easy to replace. I just did one this morning. I would leave it that way and keep the brakes functional as they should be. And Lewis says, any tips on replacing the front speed sensors? ABS light is on, but have a OBD294. I don't have any tips other than make sure it's actually the ABS sensors that are going bad because those are stupidly expensive. I would take the sensors out of the knuckles and make sure there's not metal on the ends of them. When the burrs start to go bad, they'll put metal shavings into the grease and that'll contaminate the sensors and throw codes. So it isn't always the sensors that are throwing the code. It can be a problem with metal in the grease. It can be a problem with the tone rings. It can be a problem with the wiring. But I would check the end of the sensors for debris first. Anyway, okay, now I'm actually leaving. I'm going to go eat dinner. I will catch you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.